You are listening to Safari Moon, written by Deanne Leo, narrated by Jessica Lee. Susie Cole has spent 3 years running from a nightmare she can't escape. Her wolf went silent. Her pack is ash. All she has left is her camera, her survival instincts, and Tuxedo, a talking cat who claims he's a former Special Forces operative with credentials in 14 countries. Then she crashes into Maxwell Ashford during a zebra stampede. One accidental tackle, one impulsive bite, one ancient bond neither of them asked for. Maxwell is dangerous, guarded, and entirely too interested in the photographer who just wrecked his afternoon. He's also the only thing standing between her and the dark magic practitioner who's been hunting her for 3 years. He says the bite was a mistake. His wolf says otherwise. If you love shifter romances with heart, humor, and animal sidekicks who absolutely steal the show, you're in the right place. You can find the entire collection at happynovels.com. This story is original, written specifically for you, created for this channel's audience because you asked for romances with alphas who fall hard, heroines who throw rocks at lions, and talking cats with way too much personality. Want your story idea featured next? Drop it in the comments. Liking, commenting, and subscribing is the only way to support this channel and keep these stories coming. It also helps other romance lovers find their next obsession, so spread the word. This story includes a bonus epilogue, 6 months later, a baby on the way, and Tuxedo learning to speak infant. Link in the description and pinned in the first comment. And as always, you can find the entire library at happynovels.com. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The zebras were taking their sweet time. Susie Cole pressed her eye to the viewfinder, her finger hovering over the shutter release. 300 meters out, a dazzle of zebras grazed in the golden afternoon light, their stripes shimmering like heat mirages against the amber savanna. She needed them moving, running, that moment when the herd surged as one organism, black and white blurring into something almost liquid. But no, they just stood there, eating grass, being aggressively unhurried. "You know," Tuxedo said from the passenger seat, "I ran the numbers." Susie didn't look away from her camera. "I didn't ask you to run numbers." Johannesburg Zoo. The Tuxedo Cat stretched one immaculate white paw across the dashboard. 43 zebras, climate-controlled viewing area, gift shop with acceptable coffee, 0% chance of death by trampling. "We're not going to the zoo, Tux. The statistical probability of you being crushed by a panicked herbivore on this trip is 17%. He began grooming his chest with the air of a man reviewing stock portfolios. 18 if we factor in your driving." Susie snorted. "My driving is fine. You hit a warthog yesterday." "The warthog hit me. He ran into the side of the Jeep." "Semantics." Tuxedo flicked his tail. "The point stands. Zoo zebras pose no trampling risk. They're behind proper barriers. They've been fed adequate sedatives. They've made peace with captivity." "That's depressing." "That's safe." He fixed her with those luminous green eyes. "I also calculated the odds of snakebite, heat stroke, and something called angry hippo encounter. Would you like those figures?" "Hard pass. 17%, 12%, and Tux." "Surprisingly high," he sniffed. "This entire continent is trying to kill you, and you're pointing a camera at it." Susie lowered the lens and turned to face him. Dust coated the dashboard, the seats, her arms, her hair. 3 days in the bush, and she'd started to smell like the landscape, dry grass, animal musk, and sun-baked earth. Tuxedo somehow remained pristine. His black and white coat gleamed like he'd just stepped out of a luxury grooming salon. "You were advertised as an adventure tourism guide," she said, "specialist in extreme expeditions. No terrain too dangerous, no mission too bold." "That's what your profile said." Tuxedo's whiskers twitched. "I was undercover." "Undercover as what? An adrenaline junkie?" "As someone who enjoys field work." He began washing behind his ear with practiced indifference. "I've since retired from that particular fiction. You literally negotiated a standoff between a honey badger and a cobra last week." "Professional obligation. I'm multilingual. It would be rude not to intervene." He paused mid-lick. The cobra was being unreasonable. Very poor listening skills. Susie bit back a laugh and raised the camera again. Still no movement from the zebras. "Where's your sense of adventure?" I left it in Zurich, Tuxedo said, along with my taste for unnecessary risk. Safe travel, Susie. Climate-controlled vehicles. Hotels with turn-down service. Destinations where the local wildlife doesn't view you as a protein source. You're a cat. You are wildlife. I'm a professional. He settled into a loaf shape, tucking his paws beneath his chest. There's a difference. The zebras continued their dedicated grazing. Susie sighed and adjusted her telephoto lens, scanning the fence line. The safari's perimeter stretched across the horizon, a barely visible wire boundary separating tourist-accessible land from the private reserve beyond. Besides, Tuxedo continued, you're shooting through a fence, long lens, controlled environment, animals unaware of observation. How is this different from the zoo? Because they're free. They're behind a fence. They don't know that. Susie tracked a young zebra as it wandered toward the edge of the herd. These animals live their whole lives on this land. They run when they want to run. They graze when they want to graze. They're not performing for anyone. And this matters because? Authenticity. She clicked off a test shot. The feeling in the photo, you can't fake it. An animal that's truly wild, truly free, it shows. Something in the eyes, the posture. Zoo animals have this. Resignation. Like they're just waiting for the day to end. Tuxedo yawned, displaying an impressive array of small, sharp teeth. You're projecting. I'm observing. You're romanticizing large, striped horses. Zebras aren't horses. They're horse-adjacent. He closed his eyes. If you continue this authenticity lecture, I'm going to sleep on the job. Fair warning. Susie grinned. One more shot. That's all I need. The light's perfect right now. See how it's hitting the grass? Golden hour. If they'd just move... And then? Then we pack up. Drive back to Cape Town. You can sleep on an actual bed instead of the back seat. One green eye cracked open. A low purr rumbled from his chest. The Radisson? If the gallery pays on time. The gallery. Both eyes opened now. Yes? The Natural Art Gallery Commission. The one paying you handsomely for authentic wildlife photography. That's the one. The money you've already spent. Susie's jaw tightened. I had bills. The shelter bills. Tuxedo's tone carried no judgment, just observation. 14,000 rand, if I recall. Roof repairs, food supplies, that volunteer coordinator's emergency dental work. Labo needed the dental work. She was in pain. I'm not criticizing. He stretched, extending his claws briefly before retracting them. Those abandoned children need you. The shelter would collapse without your financial intervention. Keep doing what you're doing. A pause. But zoo pictures would still be acceptable. Tux. The zebras wouldn't know. The gallery wouldn't know. Your guilty conscience would know, but you could medicate that with wine. I'm not medicating my conscience with wine. More wine, then. You already used some. Susie opened her mouth to respond, but movement caught her eye. The young zebra at the edge of the herd lifted its head, ears swiveled. Then another zebra turned. Then another. Tux! She pressed her eye to the viewfinder. Tux! They're moving! The herd shifted like a single creature, muscles rippling beneath striped hides. One zebra broke into a trot, then two. Then the entire dazzle surged forward, hooves thundering against packed earth. Susie's finger flew across the shutter. Click, click. Click. The zebras ran straight toward her, then veered left in perfect synchronization, a river of black and white flowing across the golden grass. Dust rose in clouds behind them. The ground vibrated through the Jeep's chassis. Yes, she breathed. Yes, yes, yes. Susie. Just a few more. Susie. Tuxedo's voice had changed. Sharp. Professional. The lazy house cat vanished, replaced by something far more alert. His ears rotated like satellite dishes. We have a problem. She lowered the camera. What kind of problem? Hunters. He was on his feet now, balanced on the dashboard, every muscle taut. Big cats, 300 meters northeast beyond the private fence. They're waiting. Waiting for what? What do you think? His tail lashed. The zebras are running directly toward them. It's an ambush. Susie's stomach dropped. She grabbed her binoculars and scanned the tree line beyond the fence. There, the faintest flicker of tawny fur in the shadows. Lions. at least 3 of them, positioned in a classic pincer formation. "The herd's heading straight into a kill zone," she said. "Correct." Tuxedo hopped onto the center console. "We should call reserve management. Report the lion position. Let them handle it." "That's private land, different reserve. Their management won't—" "Then call our management. Someone with authority, someone with vehicles, someone who isn't a petite photographer and a 7-pound cat." "There's no time!" Susie was already throwing the Jeep into gear. "Look at them. They'll hit the fence crossing in 2 minutes. The lions are right there." "This is a terrible idea." "Probably. We have no weapons, no backup, no legal right to be on that property." "Also true." She gunned the engine. The Jeep lurched forward, bouncing over the uneven terrain. "I want my objection formally noted." "Noted. When we die, I'm haunting you." "You can't haunt me if we die together. I'll find a way." But Tuxedo braced himself against the dashboard, ears pinned back, eyes fixed on the running herd. "The gap in the fence is 40 meters left. Mind the rocks." Susie swerved around a boulder and aimed for the gap, a section where the wire had rusted and sagged, just wide enough for the Jeep to squeeze through. The zebras thundered ahead of them, oblivious to the danger waiting in the shadows. "We need to turn them!" she shouted over the engine noise. "Cut them off before they reach the tree line." "With what? Harsh language?" Tuxedo's claws dug into the leather seat. "You weigh 50 kilograms. I weigh 3. We can't physically redirect a stampeding herd." "We don't need to redirect them. Just spook them. Make them change course." She laid on the horn. The zebras didn't react. "They're prey animals," Tuxedo yelled. "They're already spooked. One more predator-shaped object isn't going to—" Susie cranked the wheel and cut directly across the herd's path. For one heart-stopping moment, zebras surrounded the Jeep on all sides, striped bodies, rolling eyes, the hot breath of panicked animals fogging the windows. Hooves struck metal, something scraped along the door. Then the herd split. Half the zebras veered right. The other half veered left. The killing formation dissolved into chaos. "It's working!" Susie whooped. "They're turning!" "Wonderful." Tuxedo's voice was strangled. "Now might be a good time to—" "Collision ahead." Susie's head snapped forward. A man stood directly in the new path of the stampede. Tall, dark hair, dressed in khaki like he'd stepped out of a safari catalog, and in his hands, a rifle, raised, aimed at the oncoming herd. Time slowed to honey. If he fired, he'd hit the zebras. If he didn't fire, they'd trample him. Either way, someone was going to die in the next 3 seconds. Susie didn't think. She just moved. She threw open the door, launched herself from the moving Jeep, and tackled the man around the waist. They went down hard, tumbling, rolling, the world spinning as they pitched over an embankment she hadn't seen. Rocks scraped her arms. His body twisted beneath hers. Then they hit the bottom of a dried creek bed with a bone-jarring thud, landing in a tangle of limbs 3 feet below the stampede path. Hooves thundered overhead. Zebras leaped across the creek bed, sailing over them like black and white comets. Dust rained down, pebbles scattered across her back, but they were below the killing zone. Safe in the shallow ditch while the herd parted around them like water around a stone. His chest heaved beneath her. She landed on top of him, her hands braced against his shoulders, her knees bracketing his hips, her face inches from his. And then she breathed in cedar, smoke, something wild and green, like crushed juniper after rain. The scent hit her bloodstream like a drug, flooding her senses, short-circuiting every rational thought. Deep in her chest, something stirred. No, not something. Someone. Her wolf. The wolf that had gone silent 3 years ago. The wolf that had curled into a tight ball somewhere beneath her ribs and refused to wake, refused to hunt, refused to be. The wolf she'd stopped trying to reach after the first 18 months of silence. That wolf lifted her head. Susie's heart slammed against her sternum. Her skin prickled with heat. Every nerve ending lit up like a switchboard, screaming something she couldn't understand, something she didn't want to understand. The man's eyes snapped open. Gray, pale gray like winter storm clouds. They focused on her face. "What?" he said, his voice low and rough and British. "The hell do you think you're doing?" The wolf surged forward. Then something cracked inside Susie's skull, the delayed impact of the fall finally catching up, and the world tilted sideways. The gray eyes blurred. The cedar scent faded. Tuxedo's voice filtered down from the creek bank above, getting farther and farther away. Bloody hell, what kind of lunatic? The sky was very blue, very far away. Concussion protocol. Stay awake. Don't you dare. Her wolf howled. Susie had never heard her make that sound before. Not once in 28 years. Sacre bleu, merde, scheiss. The cursing continued in at least 4 more languages. Then everything went dark. Chapter 2. The ceiling was white. Aggressively white. The kind of white that suggested fluorescent lighting and institutional disappointment. Susie blinked. Hospital. She was in a hospital. A weight pressed against her hip. She turned her head, slowly, because something inside her skull protested the movement, and found Tuxedo sitting on the bed beside her. His tail wrapped around his paws. His ears lay flat against his head. His green eyes blazed with the kind of fury usually reserved for vacuum cleaners and closed doors. But beneath the fury, something else. A tightness in the way he held himself, the slight tremor in his whiskers that he couldn't quite control. He'd been scared. "You're awake," he said. "Tux, wonderful, fantastic, truly the highlight of my week." He didn't blink. "Do you know what I've been doing for the past 6 hours?" Susie reached out and touched his paw. Just briefly. Just enough. His ears flattened further. His voice dropped. "You stopped breathing. In the creek. For 11 seconds. Tux." I counted. His claws extended, then retracted. Extended again. 11 seconds. Do you know how long 11 seconds is when you're watching someone die? "I'm sorry." "You should be." He pulled his paw away, sat up straighter, rebuilt his walls with visible effort. "Because in addition to the 11 seconds of cardiac arrest I experienced on your behalf, I have also spent 6 hours being a cat." And there he was, her tuxedo, deflecting with dignity. "An ordinary cat," he continued, his voice sharpening back to its usual crisp indignation. "No speaking, no negotiating, no demonstrating my extensive linguistic capabilities. Just sitting here, like a decorative pillow with a pulse." Susie's head throbbed. She pushed herself up against the pillows. 6 hours? 6 hours. Tuxedo's tail lashed once against the mattress. "Do you have any idea how difficult it is to maintain cover as a non-sentient animal? The nurses kept trying to pet me. One of them called me Mr. Whiskers. I had to purr, Susie. I had to purr on command." "I'm sorry. I did the big eyes." He demonstrated, widening his green eyes to impossible proportions, the picture of feline innocence. "For 6 hours, my facial muscles are exhausted. I may have permanent damage." Despite everything, Susie felt her lips twitch. "You look very cute when you do that." "I am not cute. I am a former Special Forces operative with clearance in 14 countries. He dropped the innocent expression, replacing it with dignified outrage. "I once talked a silverback gorilla out of a hostage situation, in Swahili. And today I let a woman named Brenda scratch behind my ears because you decided to tackle a stranger into a ditch." Susie's hand flew to her neck. The skin there felt wrong, tender. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, ignoring the way the room tilted, and stumbled to the small mirror above the sink. 2 puncture marks sat just below her jaw. Red, swollen, unmistakable. "Ah," Tuxedo said from the bed. "You found it." "What the hell is this?" "Well, it's obviously not a zebra bite." He began grooming his paw with elaborate casualness. "Wrong dental structure. Zebras have flat teeth for grinding vegetation. That mark was made by canines, sharp ones, attached to someone who apparently has boundary issues." Susie touched the marks. Her wolf, her silent, sleeping, absent wolf, stirred again. A low hum of awareness that she hadn't felt in 3 years. "The man," she said, "the one I tackled, brought you here. Very gallant. Carried you to his Land Rover, drove 2 hours to the nearest hospital, filled out your admission paperwork." Tuxedo paused. "Then he apparently told them you're a poacher and asked security to ensure you don't leave." "He what?" "I wasn't in the creek with you. Tuxedo's tone sharpened. I was on the bank, having what I believe the humans call a cardiac event. By the time I reached the bottom, you were unconscious, and he was already carrying you to his vehicle. I didn't see what happened, but I saw that mark when they admitted you. His eyes narrowed. That's not just a bite, Susie. That's a claim. A wolf mark. The kind alphas use when they're staking territory. Susie's stomach dropped. He claimed me? It would appear so. I don't even know his name. How romantic. This isn't funny, Tux. I agree completely. He hopped off the bed and padded toward her, his black and white coat stark against the hospital linoleum. You saved his life, or tried to, and he responded by marking you like a piece of luggage. Very traditional, very old-fashioned, very much grounds for a harassment complaint. Susie turned back to the mirror. The mark throbbed with her heartbeat. Her wolf pressed against her consciousness, more alert than she'd been in years. Curious, interested, reaching for something. So I've been claimed, Susie said slowly, by a man who thinks I'm a criminal. Only if he sees it the same way. She frowned. What do you mean? Tuxedo tilted his head toward the door. Look! Susie crossed the room and peered through the glass panel. Her heart sank. A man in dark tactical gear stood outside her door. Arms crossed, feet planted. That's not police, she said. No. Tuxedo appeared at her ankle, looking up at the guard with professional assessment. Private security. High-end, judging by the equipment. Your mysterious alpha has resources. He can't just... Susie spun toward the small closet where her clothes should be. Empty. Where are my clothes? Covered in dirt, blood, and zebra feces. The nurses disposed of them. They can't do that. They did. Tuxedo sat back on his haunches. I believe the phrase used was biohazard. Susie grabbed the thin hospital gown tighter around her body. I'm leaving. I suspected you might say that. She was halfway to the door when it swung open. A doctor stepped through, middle-aged, balding, clipboard clutched to his chest like a shield. His name tag read Dr. Kruger. Ms. Cole. He positioned himself between her and the exit. You're awake, that's good, but I'm afraid I can't clear you for discharge. I'm discharging myself. You have a grade 2 concussion. Possible intracranial swelling. You need at least 24 hours of observation. I feel fine. You lost consciousness for 45 minutes. The CT scan showed. If I may, Tuxedo said. Dr. Kruger screamed. It wasn't a dignified scream. It was the high-pitched shriek of a man who had just watched a cat open its mouth and produce human speech. He stumbled backward, hit the wall, and dropped his clipboard with a clatter. Yes, the cat talks. Well observed. Tuxedo sat primly on the floor, tail wrapped around his paws. I also read, write, and file taxes. But that's not relevant to the current situation. Dr. Kruger's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. Ms. Cole has an exceptional healing factor, Tuxedo continued, as though lecturing a first-year medical student. Shifter physiology. Her concussion is already resolving. Note the steady pupil response and absence of nausea. Additionally, the situation that brought her here was a misunderstanding. She was not poaching wildlife. She was attempting to redirect a zebra herd away from a predator ambush. The police, or whatever those gentlemen outside are, can be dismissed. Dr. Kruger looked at Susie, then at Tuxedo, then back at Susie. Your cat, he said faintly. He has opinions. I have facts. Tuxedo stood and stretched. There's a difference. Dr. Kruger pressed a hand to his forehead. I don't want those men outside. They're frightening my nurses. But it wasn't my call. The man who brought you in, he insisted. The man who brought me in can go to hell, Susie said. Be that as it may. Those aren't police, are they? She stepped closer to the glass panel, studying the guard's gear. Military-grade tactical vest, earpiece, the discreet bulge of a sidearm under his jacket. Private security. Ashford Reserve Security, Dr. Kruger confirmed. Mr. Ashford was very firm about the arrangements. Susie's jaw tightened. She pushed past the doctor and shoved the door open. The security guard turned. He was tall, broad, and expressionless, in the way of men who got paid not to have opinions. Ms. Cole. His voice was flat. Please return to your room." "I'm leaving. I'm afraid I can't allow that. I'm not a poacher." She planted her feet. "I was trying to help. The zebras were running straight toward lions." "Zebras?" The guard's eye twitched slightly. "Yes, zebras. Striped. Horse adjacent. I was photographing them when—" "I don't know anything about zebras, ma'am." His expression didn't change. "My job is to keep you here until Mr. Ashford decides otherwise. Your job is—" Susie stopped. A scent hit her. Cedar, smoke, crushed juniper. Her wolf surged to attention, pressing against Susie's skin like she wanted to break through. Heat flooded her chest. Her pulse jumped. She turned. He was walking down the corridor toward her. Tall, dark hair pushed back from a face that belonged on currency, all sharp angles and aristocratic bones, gray eyes like winter storms. A cut on his temple had been butterflied shut, and bruises darkened his jaw where she'd tackled him. But he moved like nothing had happened, like he hadn't been nearly trampled by a stampeding herd less than 12 hours ago, like he owned the hospital and everyone in it. Her wolf made a sound that was embarrassingly close to a whine. Susie's hands curled into fists. "You," she said. He stopped 3 feet away. His gaze dropped to her neck, to the mark he'd left there, and something flickered in those gray eyes. Satisfaction, maybe? Or possession? "Ms. Cole." His voice was low, clipped, British. "You're awake. You bit me. You tackled me into a creek bed. I was saving your life. You were trespassing on my property." He clasped his hands behind his back. "Interfering with my wildlife, causing a stampede that could have killed us both." The stampede was already happening. "I was trying to redirect them away from the lions by driving a jeep directly through the herd. It worked. You have a concussion. You have a concussion. I have a mild headache." He tilted his head, studying her like she was a particularly confusing specimen. "And significantly more self-control than you appear to possess." Susie stepped toward him. The guard tensed. Tuxedo, who had somehow appeared at her ankle without her noticing, made a small warning sound. "You marked me," she said, her voice low and furious, "without even telling me your name. You—" "Maxwell Ashford." "Right, so now I know your name. Doesn't mean I accept your mark." His eyes met hers. "You entered my land, disturbed the animals on my property. I need to know why, and before I get my answers, you need to stay here." He pointed toward her room. "These are my men. You can either have them guarding you, or I can hand you over to the police. Your choice." Susie crossed her arms. "The police. I prefer the police." One dark eyebrow rose. "You prefer— At least they have to read me my rights before they bite me." She smiled sweetly. "And their uniforms are cuter." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or the beginning of reluctant amusement that he quickly strangled. "Fine." His voice hardened. "I'll call the police. But before they arrive, you need to stay here. I don't take orders from men who mark strangers. And I don't let trespassers wander off before I understand why they were stampeding my zebras." He stepped closer, close enough that his scent wrapped around her like a physical thing. "Stay. Here." Her wolf whined again. Susie told her wolf to shut up. "Or what?" His gray eyes held hers. The air between them crackled with something that felt dangerous, something that made her skin prickle and her heart pound. Then he stepped back. The mask returned. "My men will ensure it," he said. "Make yourself comfortable, Ms. Cole. This may take a while." He turned and walked away. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, steady and unhurried, until he disappeared around a corner. Susie stood there, shaking with anger and something else she refused to name. "Well," Tuxedo said, "that was romantic." "Shut up, Tux." The electricity, the tension, the mutual accusations of criminal activity. He began walking toward her room. "Truly, a love story for the ages." "I said shut up. I'm just observing." She followed him back into the room, slamming the door behind her. The guard resumed his position outside. Through the glass, she could see him speaking into his earpiece. "I'm not staying here," she said. "Obviously. I'm not waiting for the police, Tux." "Naturally. And I'm not—" She gestured at herself, at the thin hospital gown, at her bare feet. "I can't leave like this." "No," Tuxedo agreed. "You cannot." He hopped onto the bed and sat back on his haunches. "Which is why I took the liberty of preparing an exit strategy." "You what?" He flicked his tail toward the small cabinet beside her bed. Susie opened it. Inside, neatly folded, was a set of pale blue nurse's scrubs, complete with ID badge. She stared. "Where did you—" "Supply closet, 3rd floor. The lock was an insult to my training." He began grooming his chest with elaborate casualness. "I also mapped 3 exit routes, identified the shift change schedule, and located a service elevator that bypasses the main lobby." Tux. The name on the badge is Brenda. Fitting, I thought, given our earlier acquaintance. Susie pulled on the scrubs. They were slightly too big, but they covered her. The badge clipped to her chest. "Brenda McCoena, RN. "The guard?" she asked. "Shift change in 4 minutes. He'll be replaced by someone who hasn't seen your face." Tuxedo dropped to the floor. "Walk with purpose. Don't make eye contact. Take the service elevator to the basement, then exit through the loading dock." Susie crouched down and scratched behind his ears. "You're a genius." "I'm aware." He tolerated the affection for exactly 2 seconds before stepping away. "Now move, before your alpha returns with actual police." "He's not my alpha. The mark on your neck suggests otherwise." Tuxedo padded toward the door. "But that's a conversation for when we're not fleeing a medical facility." The service elevator smelled like industrial cleaner and old bandages. Susie pressed herself against the back wall. Tuxedo tucked inside her borrowed scrubs, his head poking out near her collar. "This is undignified," he muttered. "This is necessary. I'm a professional. I should be running reconnaissance, not hiding in your shirt." "You're a 7-pound cat. You'd get stepped on." "I would not." The elevator dinged, basement level. The doors slid open. Susie walked with purpose, head high, clipboard she'd stolen from an empty nurse's station tucked under her arm. She passed 2 orderlies, a janitor, and a security guard who didn't give her a second glance. The loading dock was empty. Late afternoon sun slanted through the open bay doors, painting long shadows across the concrete. She was out. The hospital sat on the outskirts of a small town. Dust roads, low buildings, a handful of shops already closing for the evening. No taxis. "This is problematic," Tuxedo observed from her shoulder. "I noticed." "We're 90 kilometers from your vehicle, which is currently impounded on Ashford property, 112 kilometers from the nearest major city, and you have—" He paused. "How much money do you have?" Susie checked the pockets of her borrowed scrubs. Empty. "0, she said. "I have 0 money." "Wonderful." She started walking. The main road stretched ahead, empty in both directions. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, turning the sky orange and pink. "Perhaps we could hitchhike," Tuxedo suggested. "Flag down a passing vehicle, negotiate transport in exchange for—" A car appeared. Black sedan. It pulled up to the hospital's main entrance and stopped. The rear door opened. A woman in business attire climbed out, phone pressed to her ear, and hurried inside without closing the door. Susie didn't think. She just moved. She crossed the parking lot in seconds, slid into the back seat, and pulled the door shut. The driver, a young man with dreadlocks and a bored expression, glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "You're not Ms. Ndlovu," he said. "No." Susie pulled out her most confident smile. "Change of plans. She's staying. Can you take me to the Sunrise Children's Shelter? It's in Cape Town." "Cape Town?" His eyebrows rose. "That's 2 hours." "I'll pay double the fare." Tuxedo's claws dug into her shoulder. A warning. The driver shrugged. "Your money." He pulled away from the hospital, heading for the main road. "Uber app says the fare is perfect, whatever it says." Susie sank back into the seat. Her head still throbbed. The mark on her neck still burned, but she was moving. She was free. She'd figure out the money later. She always did. The sun set. The sky turned from orange to purple to black. The road stretched endlessly ahead, headlights cutting through the darkness. Susie dozed. Tuxedo stayed alert, his green eyes fixed on the driver. "Something's wrong," he said quietly. Susie blinked awake. What? We should have reached the N1 highway 20 minutes ago. He's taken a different route. She sat up, looked out the window. Nothing but darkness, empty fields, no streetlights, no other cars. Excuse me, she said to the driver. Where are we? He didn't answer. Hey, she leaned forward. I asked you a question. The driver's hands tightened on the wheel. He glanced in the rearview mirror, not at her, but at something behind them. Headlights. Susie twisted around. 2 vehicles were following them, large SUVs running without headlights until just now, when they'd flicked on like predator eyes opening in the dark. What the hell? The driver slammed on the brakes. Susie flew forward, catching herself on the front seat. Tuxedo yowled. The car skidded to a stop in the middle of the empty road. The SUVs pulled up on either side, boxing them in. Out, the driver said. His bored expression was gone, replaced by something cold. Now. Susie's hand found the door handle. She pulled. The night air hit her, cool, dry, smelling of dust and dry grass. She stumbled out of the car, Tuxedo leaping to the ground beside her. Doors opened on the SUVs. Men climbed out. 5, 6, 7 of them, all wolves. She could smell it, all armed. And standing in front of them, illuminated by the harsh glare of headlights, was a man she hadn't seen in 3 years. Tall, silver-streaked hair, a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, pulling his mouth into a permanent sneer. Victor Crane, the alpha who had burned her pack's territory to the ground, who had killed her father, who had scattered her family like leaves in a windstorm and left her with a wolf so traumatized she'd gone silent. The man she'd been running from since she was 25 years old. Hello, little Cole? His voice was exactly as she remembered. Silk over broken glass. Did you really think I wouldn't find you? Susie's wolf, for the first time in 3 years, didn't just stir. She screamed. Chapter 3. Victor's men spread out in a loose semicircle. 7 wolves, all armed. The headlights painted harsh shadows across their faces, turning them into something out of a nightmare. Susie's wolf howled inside her chest, awake for the first time in years, and absolutely useless. No claws, no teeth, no shift, just raw terror with nowhere to go. 3 years, Victor said, stepping closer. His boots crunched against the gravel. 3 years of hunting and you've been hiding in plain sight, photographing zebras. He laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Your father would be so disappointed. Susie's hands curled into fists. Don't talk about my father. Why not? I knew him well, before the end. Victor tilted his head, studying her the way a cat studies a wounded bird. You look like him. Same stubborn jaw, same stupid courage. If you're going to kill me, stop monologuing and get on with it. Kill you? Victor's scarred mouth twisted. Oh, little Cole, I'm not going to kill you. You're worth far more alive. He gestured to his men. Take her! 2 wolves stepped forward. Susie braced herself, and then the night exploded with light. Headlights, dozens of them, blazed to life from every direction. Engines roared. Vehicles poured out of the darkness like a military convoy, surrounding Victor's SUVs in a wall of steel and chrome. The wolves froze. Victor's face went rigid. A Land Rover pulled to the front of the formation. The driver's door opened, and Maxwell Ashford stepped out. Behind him, men in matching gear fanned out, 12, 15, 20 of them. All armed, all wolves, all wearing the Ashford crest on their shoulders. Mr. Crane, Maxwell's voice carried across the night, calm and cold as frozen steel. You're on my land. Victor's eyes narrowed. He looked at the convoy, counted heads, did the math. He was outnumbered 2-1. Ashford. Victor's tone shifted, still dangerous but newly cautious. This isn't your concern. The woman is under my protection. Maxwell walked forward, hands clasped behind his back, like he was strolling through a garden party. That makes it my concern. Your protection? Victor glanced at Susie. At the mark on her neck, something ugly flickered across his face. You claimed her? My business, not yours. She's pack property, owed to me under... She's standing right here. Susie stepped forward. And I'm not property, not his, not yours. Victor ignored her. His attention stayed fixed on Maxwell. You don't know what you're getting into, Ashford. This girl comes with baggage, enemies, debts. I'll manage. Will you? Victor smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You're new to this territory. New money, new power. You think your resources are unlimited? He shook his head slowly. They're not. And neither is your strength. One phone call to the right people, and everything you've built disappears. Maxwell's expression didn't change. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Victor stepped back toward his SUV. His men followed, moving with the reluctant discipline of wolves denied a kill. Enjoy your new toy, Ashford, while you can. He climbed into the vehicle. The door slammed. The engine revved. And then Victor Crane disappeared into the darkness, leaving nothing but dust and the smell of burnt rubber. Susie stood there, heart pounding, legs shaking. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving her hollow and cold. Maxwell turned to face her. His gray eyes were unreadable in the harsh glare of the headlights. Well, he said, would you like to go to the police now? Or would you prefer to come with me? Susie opened her mouth. We'll come with you, Tuxedo announced. She looked down. The cat had positioned himself directly in front of Maxwell's boots, tail wrapped primly around his paws, gazing up at the alpha with an expression of professional assessment. Excuse me, Susie said. I've evaluated the options. Tuxedo didn't take his eyes off Maxwell. Option A, the police, understaffed, underfunded, and demonstrably incapable of protecting you from a wolf with Crane's resources. Option B, this gentleman who just arrived with a private army and appears to have functioning threat response protocols. Tux, additionally. The cat stood and stretched, extending his claws briefly before retracting them. My instincts are exceptional, honed by years of fieldwork in hostile environments, and my instincts say this one, he flicked his tail toward Maxwell, is the safer bet. Maxwell looked down at the cat. One dark eyebrow rose. Did your cat just choose for you? He's not... Susie pinched the bridge of her nose. He doesn't speak for me. I absolutely speak for her, Tuxedo said. Someone has to. Left to her own devices, she tackles strangers into ditches to protect stranger zebras who can't even thank her because they don't speak like me. Tuxedo padded toward the Land Rover and hopped onto the running board. I assume there's climate control in this vehicle? Heated seats? Perhaps a complimentary beverage service? Maxwell stared at the cat for a long moment. Then he looked at Susie. Is he always like this? Always. I see. He gestured toward the Land Rover. Get in, both of you. The interior of the Land Rover smelled like leather and cedar. Susie sank into the passenger seat, exhaustion hitting her like a physical weight. Tuxedo claimed the back seat, arranging himself on the heated leather with the air of a monarch settling onto a throne. Temperature is acceptable, he announced. Seat firmness, adequate. Legroom, generous for a feline of my stature. He began kneading the leather. I approve of this vehicle. I'm so relieved, Maxwell said dryly, pulling onto the main road. They drove in silence for several minutes. The convoy followed behind them, a river of headlights stretching into the darkness. Susie stared out the window. Her reflection stared back, pale, bruised, the mark on her neck visible even in the dim light. The reserve, Maxwell said finally. I acquired it 6 months ago. Previous owner let things go. Fences, staff, security protocols, all in disrepair. I'm still making changes. Susie turned to look at him. His profile was sharp against the darkness, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the road. Is that an apology? She asked. It's an explanation. His hands tightened briefly on the steering wheel. You shouldn't have been able to enter my property. The breach in the fence line was supposed to be repaired last week. So it's your contractor's fault I got tackled into a ditch. I didn't tackle you. You tackled me. Details. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face, gone before she could be sure. The bite, he said. His voice was carefully neutral now. It was the fall, the shock of it. My wolf acted on impulse. He paused. There was no intention behind it. It's not a mate claim. Susie's wolf stirred, pressed against her consciousness, whined. "Okay," she said. "I'll see to fixing it. There are ways, rituals. It takes time, but the mark can be broken." His jaw tightened further. "You have my word." She should have felt relieved. This was what she wanted. The mark gone, the connection severed, her life returned to normal. But her wolf was howling now, howling like she hadn't in 3 years. "Fine," Susie said. "Good, that's good." Maxwell glanced at her. His gray eyes searched her face for something. She didn't know if he found it. "The man," he said. "Crane. What does he want with you?" Susie's chest tightened. "If I don't want to tell you, then don't." His voice softened, just slightly. "Once the mark is dealt with and you're safe, you're free to leave." The words hung in the air between them. Simple, straightforward, no demands, no strings. Her wolf whined again. Susie ignored her. "Victor Crane destroyed my pack," she said quietly. "It's complicated." She stared out the window. Trees blurred past, dark shapes against a darker sky. "And your wolf?" Her hand pressed against her chest, against the hollow place where her wolf used to live. "Dormant." The word tasted like ash. "Broken. She went silent after the attack." She let out a breath. "So even if you didn't break the claim, it wouldn't matter. My wolf can't respond, can't bond, can't anything." Maxwell said nothing. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy, full of things neither of them knew how to say. Finally he spoke. "I'm sorry. About your pack. Your father." "Thank you." More silence. The road unwound ahead of them. The convoy followed like a protective shadow. "We're here," Maxwell said. The Ashford Reserve Lodge emerged from the darkness like something out of a dream. Golden lights glowed from every window. The main building sprawled across a hillside, stone and timber and floor-to-ceiling glass, organic and elegant, like it had grown from the landscape rather than been built on it. Gardens surrounded the approach, fragrant with night-blooming jasmine. Water features caught the moonlight, sending ripples of silver across dark pools. Susie's breath caught. "This is your house?" "The main lodge." Maxwell pulled to a stop beneath a covered portico. "Guest quarters, dining, common areas. My private residence is separate." "Of course it is." The front doors opened before they'd even exited the vehicle. A small woman in her 60s emerged. Gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, warm brown eyes, a smile that crinkled her entire face. "Mr. Ashford?" She hurried down the steps, then stopped short when she saw Susie climbing out of the Land Rover. Her smile widened. "Oh, you've brought a guest." "Mrs. Okonkwo, this is Susie Cole. She'll be staying with us for a while." Maxwell's tone was formal, but something in it softened. "Please see that she has everything she needs." Of course, of course." Mrs. Okonkwo was already taking Susie's arm, patting her hand like she was a long-lost relative. "Look at you, poor thing. You look exhausted, and those bruises will get you cleaned up, fed, rested. Come, come." Susie found herself being swept toward the doors. "I don't want to impose—" "Impose?" "Nonsense," Mrs. Okonkwo tutted. "This lodge has 12 guest suites and 3 of us to take care of them. You're not imposing. You're giving us something to do." Through the doors, more staff appeared. A young man with a gentle smile took her borrowed nurse's scrubs. She'd almost forgotten she was still wearing them, and promised to find her something more comfortable. An older woman with gray braids pressed a cup of hot tea into her hands before she could protest. A third staffer, barely out of his teens, was already asking about dietary restrictions. It was overwhelming. It was also somehow wonderful. Susie looked back over her shoulder. Maxwell stood in the doorway, watching. His expression was unreadable. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing down a side corridor without another word. "Don't mind him," Mrs. Okonkwo said, following her gaze. "Mr. Ashford keeps to himself, but he's good underneath." She patted Susie's arm. "You'll see." The guest suite was larger than Susie's entire apartment in Cape Town. King-sized bed piled with pillows, stone fireplace, already crackling with warmth. Private bathroom with a tub deep enough to swim in. And the view, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the moonlit savannah. Susie stood in the middle of the room, still holding her tea, utterly lost. I took the liberty of selecting appropriate quarters. She turned. Tuxedo was perched on the bathroom counter, examining the array of complimentary toiletries with professional interest. Organic shampoo, he noted approvingly. Locally sourced conditioner is that, yes, that's a loofah made from sustainable gourds. He looked at her. This establishment has standards. Tux, how did you even get up here? I walked. He began grooming his paw. The staff were quite accommodating. Apparently, they've never met a cat with my particular qualifications. I may have mentioned my background in international diplomacy. He didn't look up. And my fluency in 11 languages, and my consulting work with Interpol. Tux. The sous chef was very impressed. He hopped down from the counter and padded into the main room. He's preparing a salmon tartare as we speak. Wild-caught, hand-deboned, served with a quail egg foam and microgreens. You've been here 20 minutes. I work quickly. He leaped onto the bed and began kneading the duvet. Also, the junior housekeeper thinks I'm distinguished. Her word, not mine, though I can't say I disagree. Susie sank onto the edge of the bed. The mattress was obscenely soft. The sheets smelled like lavender and fresh air. This is insane, she said. This is appropriate. Tuxedo settled into a loaf shape beside her. You've been sleeping in a Jeep for 3 weeks. Before that, a series of budget hostels that I refuse to describe in detail. You deserve thread counts above 200. A knock at the door broke the moment. The young man from earlier, the one who'd taken her scrubs, stood in the hallway, holding a neatly folded stack of clothes. From Mrs. Okonkwo, he said. She thought you might want something clean for the morning, and this. He held out a small device. Internal phone. Dial 0 for anything you need. Kitchen's open 24 hours. This is too much, she said. The young man smiled. Mr. Ashford's orders. He said to make sure you're comfortable. He left before she could argue. Susie stared at the clothes in her hands. Designer labels. Perfect sizes. Like someone had gone shopping specifically for her in the 15 minutes since they'd arrived. Interesting, Tuxedo observed. Don't. I'm simply noting that for a man who claims the mark means nothing, he's going to considerable effort. Don't. Tuxedo's whiskers twitched. As you wish. He stretched out on the bed, extending one elegant paw. I'll be here when you're ready to discuss it. There's nothing to discuss. Of course not. He closed his eyes. Nothing at all. Susie showered until the hot water ran out, changed into the soft pajamas that had been left for her, climbed into the enormous bed, and stared at the ceiling. Her wolf paced inside her, awake, waiting. Somewhere in this lodge, Maxwell Ashford was sitting in his office, surrounded by his security teams and his resources and his carefully maintained distance. She could still smell him. Cedar, smoke, juniper. The mark on her neck pulsed with her heartbeat. He's going to break it, she told her wolf. It doesn't mean anything. Her wolf whined, and outside the window, the African night stretched on forever, dark and wild and full of things she couldn't name. Chapter 4. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting golden stripes across the bed. Susie stretched, her muscles protesting in ways that reminded her she'd been tackled, bitten, kidnapped, and rescued all within a 24-hour period. The sheets whispered against her skin, impossibly soft, smelling of lavender, and something green she couldn't name. She'd slept, actually slept. 8 hours of dreamless nothing, which was more rest than she'd gotten in weeks of Jeep camping. A knock at the door, soft, urgent. Miss Cole? Mrs. Okonkwo's voice carried through the wood. Are you awake? I have something for you. Susie sat up, pushing tangled hair from her face. Come in? The door burst open, like Mrs. Okonkwo had been leaning against it. She swept into the room carrying a wicker picnic basket the size of a small suitcase, her face alight with the particular determination of a woman on a mission. Perfect weather today. She set the basket on the table with a decisive thump. Clear skies, good light, Excellent for photography. I wasn't planning to. Mr. Ashford is waiting downstairs. Mrs. Okonkwo was already moving to the wardrobe, pulling out clothes with the efficiency of a general marshalling troops. He's cleared his entire morning. Very unusual. The man works constantly, you know, never takes time for himself. I don't want to impose on his, these will do nicely. She laid out linen pants and a soft cotton blouse on the bed. Comfortable but presentable. The boots by the door are your size. I checked. Susie blinked. You checked my shoe size? I'm thorough. Mrs. Okonkwo patted her arm. Now, the picnic basket has everything you need. Sandwiches, fruit, those little pastries you liked at breakfast, and a thermos of coffee. The good beans, not the ones we serve to tour groups. Mrs. Okonkwo, I've known him since he was a boy running barefoot through these fields. The older woman's voice softened. I've never seen him like this before. Like what? Bringing a woman home? He's been with women before. Susie snorted. A man with his power and resources? I imagine the queue wraps around the earth and back. Mrs. Okonkwo's eyes sparkled. But he only marked you, and wolves in the Ashford line mate for life. Heat crept up Susie's neck. I'm not his mate. He said the bite was a mistake. He's going to fix it. Mrs. Okonkwo's brow furrowed. Is that so? She smoothed the blanket with more force than necessary. Well, I'll let you two sort this out over a picnic. You really think a picnic basket is going to sort out an accidental soul bond? I think Mrs. Okonkwo's roast beef sandwiches have sorted out worse. Tuxedo appeared in the doorway, grooming one immaculate paw. I once witnessed her potato salad broker a ceasefire between two feuding pack alphas. True story. I don't remember asking for your input, Susie said. You rarely do, and yet my input remains essential. He padded into the room and leaped onto the bed with the grace of a small panther. You should go on this picnic. Since when do you encourage outdoor activities? Yesterday you calculated my odds of death by trampling. That was yesterday. Today I've reassessed the variables. He sat back on his haunches, tail curling around his paws. Variable 1. The lodge kitchen is preparing a salmon en croûte for dinner, and I've been promised first sampling rights if Mr. Ashford returns in an improved mood. Variable 2. You've been mentally pacing around this room for... He checked an imaginary watch. 7 minutes, which is 7 minutes too long. Variable 3. There's a variable 3? There are 12 variables. Would you like the complete list or shall I summarize? Summarize? Please. Go on the picnic. Take pretty pictures. Let the wealthy alpha court you properly. His whiskers twitched. Some of us have dinner reservations riding on your cooperation. Mrs. Okonkwo was already heading for the door, a satisfied smile on her face. I'll tell Mr. Ashford you'll be down in 10 minutes. She was gone before Susie could argue. I'm not being courted, Susie told Tuxedo. Of course not. He began washing behind his ear with elaborate disinterest. Maxwell was waiting by the Land Rover, dressed in field clothes, khaki shirt rolled to the elbows, worn boots, a battered hat that looked like it had survived several decades of abuse. Late morning sun caught the angles of his face, throwing shadows beneath those sharp cheekbones. He looked up when she approached, and something shifted in those gray eyes. Something warm, something that made her wolf stretch and press against her ribs. He smelled like cedar again. Cedar and coffee and the dry grass of the savannah. Mrs. Okonkwo is very persuasive, he said. She's terrifying. Susie climbed into the passenger seat, settling the picnic basket between them. She is. Maxwell started the engine. A thump from the back seat made them both turn. Tuxedo sat primly on the leather, already making himself comfortable on what appeared to be a cashmere throw blanket. Absolutely not, Susie said. I'm providing security. He began kneading the blanket with his front paws. This is a professional operation. This is a picnic. In the African bush, surrounded by apex predators, venomous reptiles, and, he shuddered delicately, insects. You need protection. I need privacy. Privacy is overrated. He curled into a perfect circle, tucking his nose under his tail. Don't mind me. I'll be completely unobtrusive. Silent as the grave, you won't even know I'm here. Maxwell's mouth twitched. And if we want to have a private conversation? I'll close my eyes. Tuxedo demonstrated, squeezing his eyes shut with theatrical intensity. See? Deaf and blind, a mere decorative presence. Continue your courtship rituals as if I don't exist. We're not, Susie started. I'm not listening. His eyes remained firmly shut. Whatever you're about to deny, I'm not hearing it. This is me not hearing things, completely oblivious to romantic tension. Maxwell caught Susie's eye. His expression was unreadable, but something in his gaze suggested reluctant amusement. He's not usually this annoying, she said. I'm always this annoying, Tuxedo corrected, eyes still closed. You've simply grown accustomed to my baseline. This is premium annoyance. You should be flattered. Maxwell put the Land Rover in gear. I have a feeling this is going to be an interesting morning. They drove in comfortable silence, deeper into the reserve than she'd been before. The landscape rolled past, golden grass rippling in the breeze, acacia trees casting long shadows, a family of warthogs trotting across the road with their tails held high like tiny flags. The air smelled of sun-baked earth and wild sage, carrying the distant calls of birds she couldn't name. Her wolf stirred, stretched, pressed against her consciousness with something that felt almost like contentment. From the back seat came the soft sound of purring. Tuxedo had apparently decided the cashmere throw was acceptable and was expressing his approval in the traditional manner. There. Maxwell slowed the vehicle, pointing toward a distant rise. The Dazzle moved to the eastern grazing grounds this morning. Better light for photography. Susie's heart lifted. The zebras? Unless you'd prefer elephants or wildebeest. His mouth curved slightly. I have it on good authority there's a particularly photogenic giraffe near the northern watering hole. Very aware of his angles, apparently. Zebras are perfect. He parked on a ridge overlooking a shallow valley, and Susie's breath caught. Hundreds of them, stripes rippling like heat mirages across the golden grass, foals chasing each other in wobbly circles while their mothers grazed nearby. The morning light caught their coats and turned them luminous, black and white, and every shade of shadow between. Wow, she breathed. Take your time. Maxwell leaned against the Land Rover's hood, arms crossed. I cleared my morning for this. She shot for an hour, maybe 2. Time dissolved into the click of the shutter, the dance of light and shadow, the endless patience of waiting for the perfect moment. Maxwell stayed quiet, occasionally handing her water or adjusting the angle of the sunshade without being asked. He didn't hover, didn't offer unsolicited advice, just let her work. It was, she realized, exactly what she needed. When she finally lowered the camera, her arms aching and her memory card full, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. What? She wiped dust from her lens. Nothing. But his mouth curved slightly. You're very focused when you work. Is that a compliment or a criticism? Observation. He pushed off from the hood and retrieved the picnic basket. Hungry? They spread a blanket in the shade of an acacia tree, the picnic basket between them like a peace offering. Susie bit into a sandwich, roast beef, horseradish, something green and peppery that made her taste buds sing, and made a sound that was probably embarrassing. Mrs. Okonkwo's secret recipe, Maxwell said. She won't tell anyone what's in the sauce. I've offered bribes, significant bribes. Smart woman, hold out for equity. Terrifying woman. He poured coffee from the thermos, the rich aroma curling through the warm air. She threatened to quit last month when I suggested we switch to a more cost-effective catering service for tour groups. Did you switch? I'm not suicidal. Susie laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised her. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this. Light. Her wolf pressed closer, warm, content, reaching. Maxwell set down his coffee cup. His expression shifted into something more serious. I need to tell you something. Susie's stomach tightened. That's never a good opening. The mark. He touched his own neck, mirroring where he'd bitten her. Removing it isn't simple. There are requirements, old rituals, items that have been in my family for generations. Items? A stone. His jaw tightened. The Ashford Moonstone. It's been used to break accidental bonds for centuries, but it's kept at the family estate in England. And? I called my parents. He said it like he was confessing to a crime. Last night, I explained the situation and asked if I could use the stone. Okay, Susie frowned. That sounds reasonable. My mother wants to bring the stone here in person. To? Break the bond? She wants to meet you. The sandwich turned to concrete in Susie's throat. I'm sorry. Maxwell's voice was stiff. I told her it wasn't necessary, that the mark was an accident and you have no interest in, but she insisted. They arrived this evening. This evening? Susie's voice came out approximately 2 octaves higher than normal. Your parents are coming here, tonight, to meet me. I'm aware of how this sounds. Your parents think that I'm your... I explained the situation. Did you explain that we met yesterday? That I tackled you into a ditch? That the sum total of our relationship is mutual attempted manslaughter? I may have glossed over some details. Susie stood up so fast, she knocked over the coffee thermos. I can't meet your parents. It's just dinner. Just dinner. She started pacing. The zebras in the distance scattered at the sudden movement. Just dinner with your aristocratic British family who think I'm your... They don't think anything. They're curious. About the random woman their son accidentally mate-marked in a zebra stampede? When you phrase it like that, how else would I phrase it? She spun to face him. Maxwell, I don't own clothes appropriate for meeting parents. I don't know which fork to use at fancy dinners. I grew up in a pack house with 12 siblings where formal dining meant everyone got their own plate instead of eating from the pot. You don't have to impress anyone. Easy for you to say. You're the one with the ancestral moonstone and the mother who books international flights to investigate accidental bitings. She didn't have to book. We have a private jet. And that helps how, exactly? Maxwell stood, slowly. His gray eyes held hers with an intensity that made her wolf sit up and take notice. Susie, his voice was calm, too calm. My mother will like you. You don't know that. I know. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the cedar and smoke on his skin, because He stopped, jaw tight. Whatever he'd been about to say, he swallowed it back down. There are clothes at the lodge, he said instead. I had Mrs. Okonkwo order options, and I'll handle the dinner conversation. All you have to do is show up, and not embarrass you. You couldn't embarrass me if you tried. Her wolf made a sound that was embarrassingly close to a purr. A commotion from the edge of the ridge drew their attention. Tuxedo had somehow made his way down the slope and was now standing approximately 20 feet from the zebra herd, his small body rigid with concentration. His mouth was moving. Sounds emerged, strange whinnying sounds interspersed with what might have been snorts. What is he doing? Maxwell asked. I'm afraid to find out. Tuxedo's head turned sharply, his ears flattened. He made another sound, higher pitched this time, almost like a whinny. A zebra mare lifted her head, stared at him, snorted once, dismissively, and returned to grazing. Tuxedo tried again, more emphatic this time. His whole body vibrated with the effort of producing whatever noise he was attempting. The zebra flicked her tail like she was swatting a particularly unimpressive fly. I speak 17 languages! Tuxedo's voice drifted up the ridge, sharp with indignation. 17! Equine was supposed to be number 12. The horse I practiced with in Vienna was perfectly comprehensible. Another zebra looked up. This one was younger, a gangly adolescent with ears that seemed too big for his head. He took 3 steps toward Tuxedo, head tilted in apparent confusion. Finally, Tuxedo sat back on his haunches, tail curling with satisfaction. Someone with linguistic appreciation. Now, as I was saying, the young zebra sneezed directly in his face. Tuxedo's yowl of outrage echoed across the savannah. There appears to be a dialect issue, he shouted toward them, furiously grooming his now damp whiskers. Viennese warmblood and African plain zebra are apparently not mutually intelligible. This is a failure of my training materials, not my abilities. Susie pressed her hand over her mouth, trying desperately not to laugh. Maxwell wasn't even trying. His shoulders shook silently, and when she glanced at him, his gray eyes were bright with something that looked almost like joy. Your cat, he said, is attempting to have a conversation with a zebra. He's not my cat. He's a former Special Forces operative who graciously allows me to provide housing and transportation. Ah, my mistake. Down the slope, Tuxedo had recovered his dignity, or was attempting to. He sat very straight, grooming his face with aggressive precision, while the young zebra continued to stare at him with what could only be described as bemused contempt. "I will figure this out," Tuxedo announced to no one in particular. "I once negotiated a hostage situation with a silverback gorilla. I will not be defeated by a horse in fancy pajamas." The zebra snorted again. Tuxedo stalked back up the hill, his tail held high, his whiskers still damp, his dignity in tatters. "Not a word," he said as he passed them. Susie bit her lip. Maxwell's mouth twitched. "Not," Tuxedo repeated, leaping into the Land Rover with as much grace as he could muster. One single word. The ride back to the lodge was very quiet, except for the occasional suspicious sound that might have been suppressed laughter, and one very pointed silence from the back seat. Chapter 5. The wardrobe in her room had multiplied overnight. Where there had been a reasonable selection of safari-appropriate clothing, there were now racks upon racks of evening wear, silk, cashmere, something that looked like it had been spun from actual moonlight. "This is insane," Susie said. "This is preparedness." Tuxedo sat on the bed, watching her with the patient superiority of a cat who had seen empires rise and fall. Different events require different armor. A formal dinner with aristocratic wolf-shifters calls for strategic textile deployment. I don't know what any of those words mean. Clearly. He stood and stretched, extending his claws briefly before retracting them. "Fortunately, you have me." A knock at the door. Mrs. Okonkwo again, this time bearing a tea tray and an apologetic expression. "Mr. Ashford sends his regrets," she said. "Emergency conference call with his London office. He'll be unavailable until this evening." "Unavailable?" Susie stared at her. "His parents arrive in 5 hours and he's on a conference call?" "International business waits for no one, dear." Mrs. Okonkwo set down the tea. "But he asked me to tell you not to worry, and he asked," she glanced at Tuxedo, "your companion to assist with preparations." Tuxedo's ears perked forward. "He asked me specifically?" "He said, and I quote, 'The cat seems to know things, let him help.'" Tuxedo's chest puffed out approximately 3 sizes. "Finally, recognition of my expertise." Mrs. Okonkwo fled before she could be drawn into further conversation. Susie looked at Tuxedo. Tuxedo looked at Susie. "No," she said. "You don't have a choice." He hopped off the bed and padded toward the wardrobe with the purposeful stride of a general approaching a battlefield. "Mr. Ashford has delegated your social education to me. I intend to deliver results. Tux, first." He sat back on his haunches and fixed her with those luminous green eyes. "Posture. You're standing like a woman who expects to be attacked. Shoulders back, chin up. You are not prey. You are a guest. I'm a wildlife photographer who smells like zebra. You're a woman who saved a billionaire's life and got marked for her trouble. That's a power position." His tail flicked. "Now, shoulders." Susie adjusted her posture. Better. Not good, but better. He began circling her like a very judgmental shark. "The Ashfords are old money, very old. The kind of old that remembers which king granted their original land rights. They'll assess you in the first 30 seconds and form opinions that will take years to shift." "That's not terrifying at all." "It shouldn't be. You have advantages." He stopped in front of her. "You're genuine. You're passionate. You saved their son's life at risk to your own. These are points in your favor. And the points against? You have no idea which fork is for salad." "I know which fork is for salad." "Do you? Really?" His whiskers twitched. "Which one?" Susie hesitated. "The small one?" "There are 3 small ones." "The smallest small one?" Tuxedo sighed, the sigh of a man carrying impossible burdens. "We have work to do." What followed was the most intensive 4 hours of Susie's life. Tuxedo drilled her on formal place settings. The bread plate is always on your left, the water glass on your right. Never drink from the wrong glass unless you want to signal that you're drunk. He lectured on conversation topics, Compliment the estate, not the money. Aristocrats hate discussing actual wealth. It's gauche. He demonstrated proper napkin folding. No, not like that. You're making a sad triangle. It should be a dignified rectangle that whispers quiet confidence. I can't make my napkin whisper anything, Susie groaned, collapsing onto the bed. It's fabric. It doesn't have vocal cords. Everything communicates. Tuxedo sat on her pillow, unmoved by her suffering. Your napkin, your posture, the precise angle at which you hold your wine glass. He demonstrated with an imaginary glass, pinky tucked, wrist slightly elevated. Like this. See? This says I've been to wine country, and I understood what the sommelier was talking about. It says I'm a cat pretending to drink invisible wine. Same energy. He dropped the pose. Now, let's discuss topics to avoid. Let me guess. Politics, religion, and how I tackled her son into a ditch. Also, money, property values, your lack of pack affiliation, and anything that suggests you might be interested in the Ashford fortune. He paused. Which you're not, correct? I didn't even know he had a fortune until yesterday. Good, lead with that if it comes up. His ears rotated toward the window. However, you should probably prepare some impressive accomplishments to casually mention. What awards have you won? I placed third in a regional photography competition in 2019. What was second place? A 14-year-old with an iPhone. Tuxedo closed his eyes briefly. We'll emphasize your natural talent and artistic vision, and we won't discuss the second or first places. You mean lie, Tux. I mean strategically reframe. He hopped off the pillow. Now, wardrobe selection. You'll want something that says, I'm confident but not trying too hard. I recommend the navy silk. It brings out your eyes without screaming desperate to impress. I'm not desperate to impress. That's why we don't want to accidentally give that impression. He padded toward the wardrobe. The green is too bold. The black is too funereal. The red says, I'm here to seduce your son, which, while potentially accurate, is not the opening message we want to convey. I'm not trying to seduce anyone. The navy, he repeated. Trust me. By the time Mrs. Okonkwo knocked to announce the Ashfords' imminent arrival, Susie had been transformed. The navy dress fit like it had been made for her, probably because it had been. Her hair was pinned up in something Tuxedo called elegant disarray, and she called, I gave up trying to make it behave, subtle makeup that somehow made her look like a better version of herself. Heels that were terrifying, but apparently non-negotiable for proper leg line. She looked, she had to admit, almost like she belonged here. Remember, Tuxedo said, conducting a final inspection from his perch on the bathroom counter. Confidence, poise, you are not intimidated by wealth or status. You are... A flare shot into the sky outside the window. Red light blazed against the fading afternoon, burning a trail of smoke across the golden horizon. Tuxedo's ears snapped forward. His body went rigid, every muscle tensing as his head swiveled toward the distant savannah. That's a predator alert, Susie said. I'm aware. His voice had changed. Sharp, professional, all traces of etiquette instructor gone. Eastern perimeter, near the zebra grazing grounds. His ears rotated like satellite dishes. I'm picking up radio chatter. The lions. The ones from the ambush yesterday. His tail lashed once. They've returned. Footsteps thundered in the corridor outside. Voices shouted. Doors slammed. She yanked open her door to find chaos, staff running, security personnel barking into radios, the organized calm of the lodge dissolving into controlled panic. Maxwell emerged from his office at the far end of the hall, his conference call forgotten, his jacket already shed, his gray eyes hard as flint. Report, he snapped at the nearest guard. 3 lions, sir, maybe 4. They've positioned themselves between the fence line and the main herd. Same formation as before. The zebras? Spooked but holding. If we approach from the north, we can... You'll drive them straight into the kill zone. Susie pushed through the crowd. The zebras will panic. They'll run toward what they perceive as safety, which is away from your vehicles. That's exactly where the lions want them. Maxwell turned. His gaze swept over her, the navy dress, the careful hair, the bare feet where designer heels should be. You should stay here, he said. You should listen to someone who understands animal behavior. I have wildlife experts on staff, who clearly haven't figured out that lions hunt in coordinated patterns. She crossed her arms. Those cats aren't hungry, they're territorial. They came back because they think this is their land now. Driving vehicles at them won't chase them off. It'll trigger a fight response. And your suggestion? Small team, circle wide around the herd. Approach from downwind so the zebras don't spook. Use noise and light to drive the lions back toward their own territory, then seal that fence line permanently. Maxwell stared at her for a long moment. His jaw worked. You're wearing a dinner dress. I'm aware. My parents arrive in 45 minutes. Then we'd better work fast. Something flickered in those gray eyes. Frustration, maybe, or respect. Hard to tell with him. Fine. He turned to his head of security. Thomas, you're in charge of the lodge. Full lockdown. The helicopter with my parents lands. You escort them inside and keep them comfortable until I return. Sir, no arguments. Maxwell grabbed a rifle from the weapons rack by the door. Johnson, Reeves, Okafor, you're with me in the Rover. Williams, take the backup vehicle. Miss Cole, he met her eyes. You ride with me. And if you get killed, I'm not explaining it to my mother. Noted. She kicked off her heels and ran for the door. Tuxedo materialized at her ankles, keeping pace with the silent efficiency of a shadow. I'm coming, he said before she could argue. I wasn't going to stop you. Good, because you weren't going to succeed. The Land Rover tore across the savannah as the sun sank toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and blood. Susie gripped the dashboard with one hand, the other pressed against Tuxedo, who had claimed the back seat with the air of a general surveying a battlefield. I'm providing tactical support, he said when Maxwell glanced in the rearview mirror. My hearing is exceptional. I can track the lions' positions from their breathing patterns. You can hear them breathing? I can hear a mouse's heartbeat at 50 meters. His ears swiveled. The lions are 400 meters northeast, still in position. They haven't moved. Maxwell's hands tightened on the wheel. They're waiting for us to make a mistake. They're waiting for dinner, Susie corrected. We need to convince them the menu's changed. They crested a ridge and the scene spread out below them. The zebra herd had clustered near a rocky outcropping, their stripes stark against the golden grass. Even from this distance, Susie could see their agitation, heads raised, ears swiveling, bodies pressed close together. And there, in the shadows of the tree line, 3 tawny shapes watched and waited. I count 3, Maxwell said. 4. Tuxedo's voice was tight. There's one in the grass to the left, flanking position. Classic pincer formation. How do you know about lion hunting formations? I told you 17 languages. You don't learn to speak lion without understanding how they think. Maxwell pulled the vehicle to a stop and reached for the rifle. Sir, Johnson's voice crackled over the radio from the backup jeep. We have clear shots. Say the word. Negative. Maxwell's jaw tightened. We're not shooting unless absolutely necessary. These are wild animals, not targets. With respect, sir, they're predators threatening your... I said negative. He turned to Susie. Your plan. Walk me through it. She scanned the landscape, calculating angles and distances. We split up. Your team circles east, makes noise, flashes lights. I take the Rover west, do the same. We create a corridor, make them think they're surrounded. Lions are smart. They'll retreat rather than fight a battle they can't win. And if they don't retreat? Then we reassess. But shooting them is a last resort. You kill one lion, the others remember. They'll come back. They'll be smarter. They'll be angrier. She met his eyes. You want them gone? Make them think this territory isn't worth the trouble. Don't make it personal. Maxwell held her gaze for a long moment. Williams, you heard her. Take eastern approach. Lights and noise on my signal. He reached for the ignition. We're going west. The plan was working. Susie watched the lions through binoculars as the jeep's headlights blazed from the east, accompanied by shouting and the blare of a horn. The big cats stirred, their ears flattening, their tails beginning to lash. They're moving, Tuxedo reported from the back seat. Repositioning. They're starting to retreat. Maxwell hit the Rover's horn. The sound split the evening air. He flashed the high beams 3 times in rapid succession. The lions broke formation. One by one, the tawny shapes melted back toward the fence line. moving with the reluctant dignity of predators who had decided this hunt wasn't worth the effort. "It's working." Susie lowered the binoculars. "They're heading back toward— Split!" Tuxedo's yowl was sharp. "They're splitting up. 2 going north, 2 going south." Maxwell cursed and wrenched the wheel. "Williams, take the northern pair. We'll handle the south." The rover lurched forward, racing to cut off the retreating lions before they could circle back toward the herd. Grass whipped against the undercarriage. The vehicle bounced over hidden rocks, the suspension groaning in protest. "There," Susie pointed. 2 o'clock. They're heading for the gap in the fence." Maxwell gunned the engine, and then the world flipped. The rover's front tire hit something, a rock, a hole, something hidden in the tall grass, and the vehicle pitched sideways. Susie's stomach lurched into her throat. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. She had one moment to grab Tuxedo and curl around him before the roof became the floor, became the roof again. Then everything stopped. Silence. Dust. The tick of cooling metal. "Susie!" Maxwell's voice, rough and urgent. "Susie!" She opened her eyes. The world was sideways. The rover had landed on its side, windows shattered, the smell of petrol and crushed grass thick in the air. She was pressed against what used to be the passenger door. Tuxedo still clutched against her chest. "I'm okay," she coughed dust. "Tux?" Intact. His voice was shaky but present. "Though I may never forgive you for the undignified transport method." Maxwell was already moving, crawling through the wreckage toward her. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, and his shirt was torn, but his eyes were clear and focused. "Can you move?" He reached for her. "I think so." She took his hand, let him pull her through the shattered windshield. Glass crunched beneath her bare feet. She'd lost her shoes somewhere in the chaos, but she was alive. They were alive. Maxwell's hands ran over her arms, her shoulders, her face, checking for injuries. His touch was clinical, but his eyes were wild. "Just cuts," she said. "I'm fine. Maxwell, I'm—" A low growl cut through the evening air. They both froze. 20 meters away, a lion emerged from the grass. Not retreating, not fleeing, standing its ground, golden eyes fixed on them with predatory focus. One of the two that had split south, its partner had fled. This one hadn't. "The gun," Maxwell breathed. "It's still in the car." "Don't move." Susie's voice was barely a whisper. Moving triggers chase instinct. "I'm not planning to stand here and become dinner. Just wait, let me think." The lion took a step closer. Its muscles rippled beneath tawny fur. Its tail lashed slowly, hypnotically. Maxwell moved. Not toward the car, away from her. Deliberately, purposefully, putting distance between them, drawing the lion's attention to himself. "Maxwell, what are you—" "I'm going to shift." His voice was calm, too calm. "I can hold it off long enough for you to run." "You'll die." The words ripped out of her. Wolf against lion is suicide. They're bigger, stronger, probably. Gold flickered at the edges of his eyes. His wolf rising to the surface. "Run, Susie." "I'm not." He started to shift. The lion's head snapped toward him. Its growl deepened into something that vibrated in Susie's chest. Two predators. Challenge met with challenge. Blood about to meet blood. Her hand moved before she could think. The rock was smooth and heavy, sun-warm against her palm. She threw it with every ounce of strength she had. It struck the lion's flank with a solid thunk. The great cat spun, its golden eyes locked onto her. Oh, that was a mistake. The lion charged. Susie turned and ran. There was a tree, close, maybe close enough, branches low enough to grab if she could she wasn't going to make it. The thunder of paws behind her, the hot breath on her neck. A gunshot split the air. She stumbled, fell, rolled, looked up to see Maxwell standing over the wrecked rover, rifle in hand, barrel pointed at the sky. The lion had frozen mid-charge, ears flat, eyes wide. Another shot. The lion flinched. And then a small black and white shape stepped directly into the path between predator and prey. Enough! Tuxedo's voice rolled across the savannah. Not in English. Something deeper, rougher. A series of growls and chuffs that resonated in Susie's bones. The lion stared at him. Tuxedo stared back. More sounds. A conversation she couldn't follow. The lion's tail lashed. Tuxedo's tail lashed back. Some kind of negotiation was happening, or an argument, or possibly both. The lion made one final sound. Low, reluctant. Then it turned and disappeared into the gathering darkness. Silence fell over the savannah. Susie sat in the dirt, her navy dress torn, her hair falling in tangles around her face, her feet bare and bleeding from a dozen small cuts. She watched Tuxedo walk toward her with the measured dignity of a diplomat exiting a summit meeting. "What?" she managed. "Did you say to it?" "I explained the situation." He sat down and began grooming his chest with elaborate casualness. Pointed out that this territory is protected by wolves with resources and firearms. Mentioned that continued aggression would result in consequences. That's it? I may also have implied that Mr. Ashford would be providing weekly buffalo carcass deliveries to a designated location on the western boundary. Maxwell appeared, dropped the rifle, crossed the distance between them in 3 strides, and pulled Susie into his arms so hard it knocked the breath from her lungs. "You threw a rock at a lion." His voice was muffled against her hair. "You were going to fight it with your face. That's not—" He pulled back enough to look at her. His gray eyes were bright, almost wild. "You threw a rock. At a lion. To save me?" "Seemed fair. You were about to shift to save me." "That's different." "How?" "Because I—" He stopped. His jaw worked. His hands tightened on her shoulders. "Because you're my mate." Her wolf surged forward so hard Susie swayed. "You're an idiot, Max," she whispered. Something shifted in his expression. Something cracked open. For one endless moment, she thought he was going to kiss her. Then headlights swept across them, and the backup jeep crested the ridge. "Sir!" Johnson was already jumping out. "Sir, are you okay?" Maxwell stepped back. The mask slid into place. "We're fine. The lions retreated. Get us back to the lodge." They arrived at the lodge looking like survivors of a small war. Susie's navy dress, her carefully selected, strategically appropriate, non-desperate dress, hung in tatters. Dirt and grass stains covered every inch of fabric that wasn't torn. Her hair had given up entirely, escaping its elegant disarray to become just disarray. Blood smeared her arms from a dozen small cuts, and her feet were bare, bleeding, and absolutely not presenting a proper leg line. Maxwell wasn't much better. His shirt was ripped. A cut on his forehead had dried into a rusty streak down his temple. Dirt caked his boots and his hands and approximately 70% of his face. Tuxedo somehow remained pristine. His black and white coat gleamed as though he'd just stepped out of a luxury grooming session. The front doors swung open. 2 figures stood in the entrance hall, framed by golden light and immaculate decor. Arthur and Margaret Ashford. "Tux, remind me which one is the salad fork?" Susie muttered to Tuxedo, sitting on the crook of her arm. Chapter 6. Dinner was not what Susie had expected. For one thing, she was wearing borrowed clothes. A soft cashmere sweater and linen pants that Mrs. Okonkwo had produced from somewhere, since the navy dress was currently being used as evidence of poor life choices. For another, Margaret Ashford had spent the first 20 minutes demanding a complete account of the lion confrontation, interrupting only to exclaim things like, "You threw a rock?" and "Maxwell Ashford, you were going to shift against a lion? Have I taught you nothing?" Arthur Ashford said very little, but his eyes crinkled at the corners every time his wife's voice rose another octave. "And then the cat," Margaret said, gesturing at Tuxedo with her wineglass. The cat negotiated. "I prefer conducted diplomatic intervention." Tuxedo sat on the chair beside Susie, a silk napkin tucked beneath his chin, delicately consuming what appeared to be seared tuna. But yes, the situation required linguistic flexibility. In lion, among other dialects. He dabbed at his whiskers with the napkin. The Serengeti accent was challenging, very guttural, but we reached an understanding. Margaret turned to her son. "Maxwell, where did you find these 2? "They found me." Maxwell's voice was dry, but something warm flickered in his eyes when he glanced at Susie. Or rather, she tackled me into a ditch, and the cat came as a package deal. I'm not a package deal, Tuxedo said. I'm a value-added service. You negotiated buffalo bribes on my behalf without authorization. You're welcome. Arthur made a sound that might have been a laugh, quickly disguised as a cough. The meal continued. Susie found herself relaxing by degrees. Margaret's warmth was genuine. Arthur's quiet presence was steadying. And Maxwell. Maxwell kept looking at her like she was something precious, something he was afraid to lose. After dinner, Margaret cornered Susie in the library. Walk with me, she said, and it wasn't a request. They stepped onto the veranda, the African night spreading before them like scattered diamonds. The air smelled of jasmine and wood smoke, and somewhere in the darkness, a nightjar called. My son is in love with you, Margaret said. Susie's heart stuttered. Mrs. Ashford, Margaret, and don't bother denying it. I've known that boy for 32 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. She settled into a wicker chair and gestured for Susie to join her. The question is, what do you intend to do about it? It's not that simple. It never is. Susie sank into the chair beside her. The cushions were soft, the night was beautiful, and her chest ached with something she couldn't name. My wolf is broken, she said quietly. She went silent 3 years ago. She's awake now since Maxwell bit me, but she can't. I can't form a proper mate bond. The connection would be one-sided. He'd be tied to someone who can't tie back. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. And you think that matters to him? It should, Susie's voice cracked. He's an alpha. His pack needs stability, a proper Luna. Someone whole. Someone whole? Margaret's tone was gentle but firm. My dear, let me tell you about someone whole. She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small photograph, worn at the edges from years of handling. A young woman smiled from the image, dark hair, bright eyes, human. Her name was Elena, Margaret said. Maxwell met her at university. She was studying art history. He was supposed to be networking with pack allies. Instead, he fell in love with a human who thought wolves were something from fairy tales. Susie's breath caught. He was going to marry her. Margaret's thumb traced the edge of the photograph. Against all pack objection, against tradition, against every voice telling him it couldn't work. Her voice softened. He didn't care about mate bonds or pack politics. He just wanted her. What happened? Car accident, 3 weeks before the wedding. Margaret tucked the photograph away. He hasn't been the same since. Closed himself off, built walls, buried himself in work and responsibility in this reserve. She met Susie's eyes, until you tackled him into a ditch. Susie's throat was too tight to speak. Mate bonds are rituals, Margaret said. Ceremonies, traditions, they matter to some wolves more than others. She reached over and took Susie's hand. My son doesn't need a bond to love you. He already does. The question is whether you're brave enough to love him back. Susie didn't sleep. She lay in the enormous bed staring at the ceiling while Tuxedo curled against her hip and pretended not to notice her restlessness. You're thinking too loud, he said finally. I'm not thinking. I'm panicking. Same energy. He stretched, extending his claws briefly before retracting them. Would you like my professional assessment? Will it help? Probably not, but it will fill the silence. He sat up and fixed her with those luminous green eyes. You love him. Tux, you threw a rock at a lion for him. You learned fork etiquette for him. You're lying awake at 2 a.m, catastrophizing about his future happiness. His tail flicked. These are not the actions of someone undecided. I can't give him what he deserves. What he deserves is someone who sees him. Not the money, not the power, not the alpha status. Tuxedo's voice was uncharacteristically serious. You see the man who sits by watering holes and watches elephants for his mother. The man who won't shoot lions because they're wild and that matters. The man who is going to fight a predator with his face to give you time to run. Susie's eyes burned. Your wolf is damaged, Tuxedo continued. So is his heart. Perhaps that's the point. He settled back against her hip. Broken things can still fit together. Sometimes the cracks are what let the light through. That's surprisingly poetic for you. I contain multitudes. He closed his eyes. Now stop thinking and go to sleep. Tomorrow will require energy. For what? Whatever you decide. His purr rumbled against her ribs. Though I suspect you've already decided. You're just too stubborn to admit it. Morning light filtered through the curtains. Susie stood in front of the mirror, studying her reflection. The cuts and bruises from last night had faded, shifter healing, finally kicking in. But she still looked like a woman who'd been through something. Because she had. She'd been through 3 years of running. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of believing she was too broken to deserve anything good. And then she'd tackled a stranger into a ditch, and everything had changed. Her wolf stirred, pressed against her consciousness, not howling this time, just waiting. Are we doing this? Susie asked silently. Her wolf's response was warm. Certain. Yes. The breakfast room fell silent when she entered. Maxwell stood by the windows, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. His parents sat at the table exchanging glances that spoke of a conversation interrupted. Even Tuxedo, perched on his usual chair, went still. Susie's heart pounded against her ribs. I've been thinking, she said. Maxwell set down his coffee. His gray eyes searched her face, hope and fear warring in their depths. About the moonstone, she continued. About breaking the bond. I don't want to break it. The words hung in the air like a held breath. Maxwell moved toward her slowly, like approaching something wild. Susie, I know my wolf is damaged. I know I can't give you a proper mate bond. I know there are 100 reasons this is a terrible idea. She lifted her chin. But I don't care. I want to be with you, if you'll have me. He reached her in 3 strides. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up to meet his gaze. If I'll have you? His voice was rough. I've been yours since you knocked me into that creek. I just didn't know how to tell you. You could have tried words. I'm trying them now. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Marry me. Susie's breath caught. What? Marry me. Today. Right now. His gray eyes blazed with something fierce and certain. I don't need ceremonies or rituals or pack approval. I just need you. Maxwell, we've known each other for 3 days. I knew you were mine in 3 seconds. He pressed his forehead to hers. Say yes. Her wolf surged forward, joyful and desperate, and finally awake. Yes. Maxwell kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't polished. It was acclaiming, thorough and devastating, and absolutely perfect. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and Susie stopped thinking about broken wolves and impossible bonds and simply let herself feel. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Margaret was already on her phone. Gerald? Yes, I know what time it is. I need you on a helicopter in 20 minutes. A pause. Because my son is getting married, and you're the only officiant I trust not to make a fuss about the short notice. Another pause. Yes, the reserve. Yes, today. Bring the paperwork. Arthur stood and straightened his jacket. I'll inform the staff. Gardens, I assume. The Elephant Overlook, Maxwell said without looking away from Susie. She loves that view. Elephants it is. Arthur headed for the door, then paused. Welcome to the family, Miss Cole. He was gone before she could respond. This is insane, Susie said. Probably. Maxwell's arms tightened around her. Is that a problem? Ask me tomorrow. The next 2 hours were chaos. Mrs. Okonkwo materialized with a dress. Ivory silk, simple and elegant, somehow exactly Susie's size. Margaret handled flowers, producing arrangements from the garden with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. Arthur coordinated staff, seating, and what appeared to be an emergency champagne delivery. Tuxedo supervised everything. The chairs are uneven, he announced from his perch on a stone wall. The 3rd row is listing to the left. Unacceptable for proper ceremony aesthetics. It's grass, Johnson said, struggling to adjust the chair in question. Grass isn't level. Then make it level. It's nature. Nature is no excuse for sloppiness. Tuxedo's tail lashed. Also, I require a role in these proceedings. Susie looked up from where Margaret was pinning a flower in her hair. What kind of role? Witness. Obviously. He hopped down from the wall and padded toward her. I've been present for every significant moment of this relationship. The ditch, the hospital, the etiquette training, the lion negotiation. His chest puffed out. I should sign the certificate. Can you sign? I have excellent penmanship. He extended one paw, demonstrating. Well, pawmanship. Cats can't be legal witnesses, Arthur said mildly. I have credentials in 14 countries. I once witnessed a treaty signing between... classified, I assume. Highly. Tuxedo sat back on his haunches. But the point stands, I should be included. Maxwell appeared at Susie's side, wearing a suit that had somehow materialized from his wardrobe. He looked devastatingly handsome and slightly shell-shocked. Let the cat sign, he said. At this point, why not? An excellent attitude. Tuxedo began grooming his chest with satisfaction. I'll need an ink pad, black preferably, to match my aesthetic. The ceremony was perfect. The elephant overlook stretched before them, golden grass rolling toward the horizon where a family of elephants grazed in the afternoon light. The air smelled of wild sage and warm earth and something sweet from Margaret's hastily assembled flower arrangements. Gerald, a small, flustered man who had apparently been Maxwell's family officiant for 30 years, stood before them with a weathered book and an expression of bemused acceptance. We are gathered here, he began, on rather short notice. Gerald, Margaret warned, to celebrate the union of Maxwell James Ashford and Susanna Marie Cole. He peered at Susie over his spectacles. I'm told you threw a rock at a lion. It seemed like the thing to do. Quite. He returned his attention to the book. Marriage is a sacred bond, a joining of souls, a commitment to... Gerald, Maxwell interrupted. Shorter version. You young people have no appreciation for tradition. But Gerald flipped several pages. Do you, Maxwell, take Susanna as your wife? To love and cherish, in good times and bad, in lion attacks, and... He glanced at his notes. Zebra stampedes? I do. And do you, Susanna, take Maxwell as your husband? To love and cherish, despite his apparent inability to avoid life-threatening situations? Susie laughed. I do. Then by the power vested in me by the state, and also several international treaties I won't bore you with, I now pronounce you... I object. The voice cut through the afternoon like a blade. Every head turned. Victor Crane stood at the edge of the overlook, flanked by 4 wolves in tactical gear. His silver-streaked hair caught the light. The scar on his face twisted as he smiled. Hello, little Cole. His voice was silk over broken glass. Did you really think I wouldn't find you? Maxwell moved instantly, putting himself between Susie and the intruder. His shoulders squared. His eyes flashed gold. You're not welcome here, Crane. I don't need to be welcome. I need to stop this farce. Victor's gaze found Susie, and something hungry flickered in his eyes. She can't marry you, Ashford. She's already claimed. Susanna Cole is my fated mate, and I've come to collect what's mine. Susie's wolf, her broken, damaged, finally awake wolf, let out a howl of pure rage, and somewhere in the distance the elephants began to trumpet. Chapter 7. Maxwell watched it happen, watched Susie's face drain of color, watched her eyes go glassy and distant, watched her wolf surge forward so hard her body couldn't contain it. She swayed, her hand reaching for him, her mouth forming words that never came. Susie. She collapsed. He caught her before she hit the ground, her weight folding into his arms like something broken. Her pulse fluttered against his fingertips, too fast, too weak. Her wolf was howling inside her. He could feel it through the mark, but her human body was shutting down. What did you do to her? Maxwell's voice came out as a snarl. Victor smiled. I told her the truth. Some truths are harder to bear than others. Take him! Maxwell jerked his head at Johnson. Now! Johnson and 3 security guards rushed forward, tactical precision, weapons drawn, and passed straight through Victor's body like he was made of smoke. They stumbled, confused, guns sweeping empty air. Victor's image flickered, rippled, dissolved into shadow. Laughter echoed from the far corner of the overlook. "Surprise!" Victor stood 20 meters away, alone now, his wolves gone like they'd never existed. "Dark magic." Arthur's voice was grim. "Such an ugly term. I prefer alternative resources." Victor spread his hands, shadows curling around his fingers like living things. "The old ways have their uses, especially when hunting things that don't want to be caught." He vanished again. Maxwell didn't see the blow coming. One moment he was holding Susie. The next, something hit him like a freight train. Invisible, impossibly strong, and he was flying. He slammed into the stone wall at the far end of the garden, the impact driving the air from his lungs. And Susie was no longer in his arms. He scrambled up, vision swimming, ribs screaming. Across the overlook, a shape was moving. Victor, solid now, with Susie's limp body thrown over his shoulder like a prize. "Thanks for the hospitality, Ashford." Victor's voice drifted back as he ran. "I'll take what's mine now." "Stop him!" Security swarmed from every direction. Johnson sprinted for the vehicle bay, shouting orders into his radio. 30 seconds later, he was back. His face was ashen. "The cars, sir, all of them. Something's wrong with the engines. They won't start." Maxwell's wolf surged forward, clawing at his control. Shift, chase, hunt, kill. "Maxwell, no." His mother's hand closed on his arm. "Think. He's a dark magic practitioner. In wolf form, you're vulnerable to his spells. You'd be running blind into whatever trap he's set." "I can't just—" "In human form, you can hurt him." Arthur's voice was steady. "He still needs his body to cast. You need your hands, your weapons, your mind. On foot, I'll never catch him." Who said anything about foot? A sound rose from beyond the garden. Hoofbeats, dozens of them, getting closer. Maxwell turned. Zebras poured over the ridge. 20, 30, more. A river of black and white stripes thundering toward the overlook. And at the front of the herd, sitting astride the lead mare, with the desperate dignity of a man clinging to a torpedo, was Tuxedo. "I negotiated transportation," the cat yelled, his voice barely audible over the hoofbeats. "Don't ask about the terms. There may have been additional buffalo concessions. The important thing is we have horses." "They're not horses," Maxwell said automatically. "They're horse-adjacent, and they're willing to help. Get on!" The herd slowed as they reached the garden, milling and snorting. The lead mare, a massive creature with a battle scar across her flank, fixed Maxwell with an intelligent eye. He didn't hesitate. One leap and he was on her back, his hands finding her mane, his legs gripping her barrel. His mother mounted the next zebra with surprising grace. His father took a third. "Which direction?" Maxwell demanded. Tuxedo's ears swiveled. "Northeast, half a kilometer. He's slowing down. The magic must be draining him." His claws dug into his zebra's mane as the creature shifted beneath him. "Also, I want it noted for the record that I hate this. I hate everything about this. This animal has no respect for smooth locomotion." "Noted. Everyone, ride!" The herd surged forward. Consciousness returned in fragments. Dry grass against her cheek, the smell of dust and sweat, the distant sound of hoofbeats, or maybe that was her own heartbeat, thundering in her ears. She opened her eyes. Victor stood 10 meters away, bent over, hands on his knees, breathing hard. Sweat plastered his silver-streaked hair to his forehead. The shadows that had curled around his fingers were gone, leaving him looking almost ordinary, almost human. "You're awake." He straightened, but the movement was stiff, exhausted. "Good. I was worried I'd have to carry you the rest of the way." Susie pushed herself up onto her elbows. The world tilted, steadied. Her wolf pressed against her consciousness, not howling anymore, but alert, waiting. "Where are your men?" "Coming." But his eyes flicked toward the horizon, and she saw the truth in them. No one was coming. No one wanted to risk their life invading Ashford territory for a man who dealt in dark magic and broken promises. He was alone. "Victor." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I forgive you." His head snapped toward her. "For what you did to me, to my family, the forced bond, the magic." She sat up fully, ignoring the way her muscles screamed. "I forgive you, and if you leave now, just walk away. Maxwell will let you live." Victor stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was an ugly sound. Bitter. Broken. "Forgive me?" He stepped closer. "You think I want your forgiveness? You think that's why I've spent 3 years hunting you across 2 continents? Then what do you want? You?" His eyes burned with something that might have been madness. "I wanted you. Your wolf, your fire, the way you looked at me like I was nothing." His hands curled into fists. "I was going to make you love me, force the bond until it felt real, until you couldn't remember what it was like to be free." Susie's stomach turned. "That's not love, that's possession." "Same thing," he shrugged. "But it doesn't matter now. You've ruined it. Bonded yourself to that Ashford peacock, chosen someone else." His voice hardened. "And what I can't have, no one can." He raised his hand. Shadows flickered at his fingertips, weak, sputtering, but still deadly. "Victor, I'm going to kill you, little Cole. And then I'm going to kill your precious Alpha. And then I'm going to burn this reserve to the ground and salt the earth so nothing ever grows here again." Susie's wolf surged forward, not in fear, in fury. "No," her wolf said, "not today, not ever again." "You're out of power," Susie said, rising to her feet. "Your magic is drained. Your men abandoned you. You're alone in hostile territory with nothing but spite keeping you upright." She took a step toward him. "You've already lost. You just haven't admitted it yet." Victor's face twisted. "I have enough power left to—" Hoofbeats, thunder rolling across the savannah. Victor spun. And there, cresting the ridge like something out of legend, was Maxwell Ashford, riding a zebra, silhouetted against the setting sun, his gray eyes blazing with cold fury. Behind him, his parents. Behind them, a herd of 30 zebras running in perfect formation, and clinging to the lead mare's mane with the expression of a man who had seen too much and could never unsee it, was Tuxedo. "This is the worst day of my professional career," the cat yelled as they thundered closer. "I want that on the record. The absolute worst." Victor ran. He made it approximately 12 steps before Maxwell's zebra cut him off. The Alpha launched himself from the animal's back, tackling Victor to the ground with the precision of a predator bringing down prey. They rolled. Victor's fist connected with Maxwell's jaw. Maxwell's knee drove into Victor's stomach. Shadows flickered and died as Victor tried to summon magic that was no longer there. Then Maxwell had him by the throat, pinned against the earth, and everything went still. "Give me one reason," Maxwell said, his voice low and deadly. "Not to kill you where you lie." Victor laughed, blood on his teeth. "Kill me and she dies. That's how forced bonds work, you idiot. I go, she goes. We're connected." Maxwell's hand tightened. "Maxwell." Susie touched his shoulder. "He's telling the truth. The bond. He used dark magic to create it. That's why my wolf went dormant. She couldn't bear the pain of being tied to him, so she—" "Shut down." Her voice cracked. "Every time I felt the pull toward him, she retreated further. It was the only way to survive." "That's not a mate bond." Maxwell's voice was rough. "That's a curse. Semantics." Victor grinned up at him. "Point is, you can't kill me without killing her. So what's it going to be, Ashford? Your revenge or your bride?" A shadow fell across them. Margaret Ashford stood over Victor, the moonstone glowing in her palm. Its pale blue light pulsed like a heartbeat, silver veins catching the fading sun. "He's right about one thing," she said calmly. "Forced bonds are tricky. Kill the caster, and the magic backlash can destroy the victim too." Victor's grin widened. "However," Margaret knelt beside Susie, holding out the stone, "the moonstone doesn't kill. It severs, clean cuts, no backlash." She met Susie's eyes. "May I?" Susie nodded. Margaret pressed the stone against the mark on Susie's neck. Not Maxwell's mark, but another one, older, hidden beneath the skin. A brand Susie had carried for 3 years without knowing it was there. Light flared. Susie gasped as something tore loose inside her, something dark and twisted and wrong. It ripped free with a sound like breaking glass, and then she was free. Her wolf howled in triumph. Not broken anymore, not dormant, whole. Victor screamed. The bond snapped back to him like a rubber band stretched too far, and he convulsed beneath Maxwell's grip, his body arching, his eyes rolling back. The connection he'd forced onto her had nowhere to go now. It was eating him alive from the inside out. "Make it stop," he gasped. "Make it stop, please." Maxwell looked at Susie. His gray eyes asked the question he wouldn't voice. She could let him die. After everything Victor had done, her father, her pack, 3 years of running, she could let the magic consume him and never lose a moment's sleep. But that wasn't who she wanted to be. "Let him go," she said. Maxwell's jaw tightened. "Susie, he has nothing now. His magic is broken. His bond is gone. His men abandoned him." She looked down at Victor, writhing in the dirt, and felt something she hadn't expected. Pity. "Blood on this land isn't worth it," she said. "Let him go." For a long moment, Maxwell didn't move. Then he released Victor's throat and stepped back. Victor scrambled away, coughing, shaking. The shadows that had once danced at his fingertips were gone. He looked small now, diminished, just a man who had wanted something he couldn't have and destroyed himself trying to take it. "Run," Maxwell said. His voice was ice. "If I ever see you again, I won't ask her permission." Victor ran. He disappeared into the gathering darkness, stumbling, broken, alone. And Susie watched him go, her hand finding Maxwell's, her wolf singing inside her. Chapter 8. They rode back toward the lodge as the sun began its descent, but Maxwell pulled his zebra to a stop at the elephant overlook, the place where, just hours ago, they'd almost become husband and wife. The chairs were still there, the flowers, wilting now in the evening heat. Gerald's book lay abandoned on the stone altar. "Maxwell?" Susie twisted to look at him. "What are we?" He dismounted. His legs nearly buckled when they hit the ground. "Max? I need a minute." His voice was rough. "Wrong. Just 1 minute." He walked to the edge of the overlook, his back to her, his shoulders rigid. The savannah stretched before him, endless and golden, and somewhere out there Victor Crane was running for his miserable life. But Maxwell wasn't thinking about Victor. He was thinking about the moment Susie had collapsed in his arms. The weight of her going limp, the flutter of her pulse, too fast, too weak. The absolute certainty that he was about to lose her, just like Elena. The thought cracked something open inside him. Susie slid off the zebra and walked toward him. She didn't speak, didn't touch him, just stood beside him, close enough that he could feel her warmth, waiting. "I thought you were dying." The words scraped out of him. "When you collapsed, when he took you, I thought—" His voice broke. "I can't do that again, Susie." "Hey." Her hand found his, small and warm and alive. "Look at me." He couldn't. "Max, look at me." He turned. Her eyes were bright with tears, but she was smiling at him like he was something precious, something worth keeping. "I'm here," she said. "I'm not going anywhere. My wolf is awake, the bond is broken, Victor is gone, and I'm here." She lifted their joined hands and pressed them against her chest, right over her heart. "Feel that? That's real. That's not going anywhere." Her heartbeat drummed against his palm. Steady, strong, alive. Something in Maxwell shattered. He pulled her into his arms and buried his face in her hair and let himself break. Not dramatically. He wasn't a man who sobbed, but his shoulders shook and his breath came in ragged gasps, and for the first time in 5 years, he let someone see him fall apart. Susie held him through it. Her hands stroked his back. Her wolf pressed against his through the mark, warm and steady and patient. "I've got you," her wolf seemed to say. "I've got you now." His wolf, his careful, guarded, lonely wolf, finally let go. The bond that had been hovering between them, incomplete and waiting, snapped into place. Maxwell gasped. Susie gasped. The sensation was overwhelming, not painful but intense, like two puzzle pieces finally finding their match, like coming home after years of wandering. He could feel her. Not just her heartbeat, but her emotions. Her joy, her relief, her love. God, her love, pouring through the bond like sunlight through glass. "Oh," Susie breathed. Her eyes were wide, wet, wondering. "That's what it's supposed to feel like." "That's what it's supposed to feel like." They stood there, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other in, while their wolves twined together in a bond that nothing would ever break. "If you two are quite finished." They turned. Tuxedo sat on the stone altar, Gerald's book open before him, his tail wrapped primly around his paws. The other zebras had wandered off to graze, but the lead mare stood nearby, watching with an expression that might have been approval. "We have a ceremony to complete," Tuxedo continued. "Unless you'd prefer to remain technically unmarried while engaging in public displays of emotional vulnerability." Maxwell laughed. It was a wet sound, but real. "Where's Gerald?" Recovering from the shock of the earlier interruption, "He asked me to convey his sincere apologies and his firm belief that you can sort this out without him." Tuxedo's whiskers twitched. "I told him I would officiate." "You can't officiate a wedding." "I have credentials in 14 countries. None of them are this country." "Details." He looked at Susie. "Do you want to marry this man?" "Yes." "Do you want to marry him right now in this spot, with zebras as witnesses and a cat as your officiant?" Susie looked at Maxwell. Maxwell looked at Susie. "Yes," they said together. "Excellent." Tuxedo stood, somehow managing to look dignified despite being a 7-pound cat on a stone altar. "Then let's do this properly." Margaret and Arthur had dismounted and now stood as witnesses, Margaret's hand pressed to her heart, Arthur's arm around her shoulders. Tuxedo cleared his throat. "We are gathered here, again, to witness the union of two people who have, against all odds and common sense, decided they belong together." He looked at Maxwell. "You first. Tell her why." Maxwell blinked. "Why what? Why her? Why this? Why now?" Tuxedo's green eyes were unusually serious. "She needs to hear it. So do you." Maxwell turned to Susie. She was still in the borrowed sweater and linen pants, her hair tangled from the zebra ride, dirt on her cheek, and she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "3 days ago," he said, "you tackled me into a ditch to save my life. You didn't know me, you didn't owe me anything, but you saw a stranger in danger, and you acted." His voice roughened. "No one's ever done that for me before, not like that. Not without expecting something in return." Susie's eyes glistened. "I've spent 5 years building walls," Maxwell continued, "after Elena. I thought that was safer, easier. I thought if I didn't let anyone in, I couldn't lose anyone else." He reached up and brushed a tear from her cheek. "And then you crashed through every wall I had, with your stubborn courage and your ridiculous cat, and your absolute refusal to let me push you away." "To be fair," Tuxedo murmured, "I am exceptional." Maxwell ignored him. "I love you, Susie, not because of the bond, not because of the mark, because you threw a rock at a lion for me, because you see the man, not the alpha, because when I'm with you I remember what it feels like to be happy." His voice cracked. "I thought I'd forgotten. I thought that part of me died with Elena, but you brought it back. You brought me back." Margaret was openly crying now. Arthur's jaw was suspiciously tight. "Your turn," Tuxedo said softly to Susie. Susie took a shaky breath. 3 years ago, I lost everything. My father, my pack, my wolf." Her hand pressed against her chest. "I've been running ever since. Hiding. Convincing myself that I was too broken to deserve anything good." She looked up at Maxwell, and the love in her eyes made his heart stutter. "Then I tackled you into a ditch, and you bit me, and my wolf woke up for the first time in 3 years. A wet laugh escaped her. "You literally bit me back to life, Max. How was I supposed to not fall in love with you after that?" A choked sound came from Margaret's direction. "You make me brave," Susie continued. "You make me want to stop running. For the first time since I lost my family, I feel like I have a home." She took his hands, squeezing tight. "You're my home. You and your ridiculous reserve and your terrifying mother and your elephants and your exceptional zebra, Tuxedo supplied. Susie smiled through her tears. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life throwing rocks at lions for you. That was one time, Maxwell managed. I'll do it again, as many times as it takes. She lifted their joined hands and kissed his knuckles. That's my vow. I'll always fight for you. I'll always come back to you. And I'll always choose you. Maxwell couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his eyes too blurred. Well, Tuxedo said, and his voice was strangely thick. I think that covers it. He paused, blinked, sat down abruptly on the altar. Tux? Susie frowned. Are you okay? I'm fine. He began grooming his chest with aggressive intensity. Allergies, pollen, the savannah is full of irritants. Are you crying? I am not crying. I am a former Special Forces operative. We don't cry. But his voice wobbled, and he wouldn't meet her eyes. I'm simply moved by the pollen, which is everywhere. Susie released Maxwell's hands and scooped Tuxedo off the altar, cradling him against her chest. You ridiculous, wonderful cat. I'm not wonderful. I'm professional. But he pressed his face into her shoulder, his small body trembling. You're my person, Susie. You've been my person since you found me in that shelter 6 years ago. I want you to be happy. You deserve to be happy. Susie's tears fell into his fur. I am happy because of you, because you stayed with me when everyone else left. Someone had to keep you alive. Your survival instincts are appalling. I love you too, Tux. He made a sound that was absolutely not a sob. Obviously, I'm extremely lovable. Maxwell watched them, his wife and her cat, crying into each other, and felt his heart crack open in a completely new way. This was his family now, the woman who threw rocks at lions, the cat who negotiated peace treaties, the life he'd never thought he'd have. I hate to interrupt, Arthur said gently, but I believe there's still a ceremony to complete. Tuxedo pulled back, swiping at his eyes with one paw. Right, yes, the ceremony. He climbed back onto the altar with as much dignity as he could muster. Where was I? You hadn't gotten to the important part yet, Margaret said, dabbing at her own eyes. The important part. Yes. Tuxedo straightened, squaring his small shoulders. By the power vested in me by absolutely no one but my own considerable authority, I now pronounce you husband and wife. He looked at Maxwell. Kiss her properly this time. No interruptions. I checked the perimeter. Maxwell pulled Susie into his arms. The kiss was soft at first, tender, a promise. Then it deepened, and their wolves surged together through the bond, and Susie made a sound against his mouth that he wanted to hear every day for the rest of his life. When they finally broke apart, the sun had nearly set, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold and amber. The elephants at the distant watering hole lifted their trunks in silhouette against the dying light. The elephants are trumpeting, Susie whispered. They're welcoming you home. You're ridiculous, Max. You married me anyway. She laughed, bright and joyful and free. I really did. And that's Safari Moon, written by D.N. Leo, narrated by Jessica Lee. Thank you for spending this time with us. If Tuxedo made you laugh, if Susie made you cheer, if Maxwell made your heart do things it shouldn't, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Don't forget the bonus epilogue, 6 months later, with a baby on the way and Tuxedo demanding formal godfather status. Link in the description and pinned in the first comment. If you want more shifter romances with heart, humor, and animal sidekicks who negotiate peace treaties with lions, like and subscribe so you never miss a story. And share with a friend who needs a book boyfriend in their life. The entire collection lives at happynovels.com. Come find your next favorite. Got a story idea? A trope you're craving? A sidekick animal who deserves their moment? Drop it below. Your suggestion might just become the next video. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay wild and stay in love.